Ladies and gentlemen, gather close, if you would. Imagine, if you will, a realm not of our own, a world of towering dungeons and awakening monarchs, much like the breathtaking animations from the studios of South Korea. Our story today is not of the flashy main character, but of a figure carved from shadow and honor, a legend whispered in the halls of power, the complete life story of the knight in crimson, Igris. Our tale begins not in light, but in the solemn, echoing throne room of a forgotten dungeon. Picture him there, a silent sentinel in armor as red as a blood moon. He was not merely a monster, he was an institution, a masterpiece of animation. His every movement was a symphony of deadly grace, his plume a crimson banner in the still air. He was the unyielding gatekeeper, the final judgment for any foolhardy enough to challenge his keep. His life was one of solitary purpose, duty, an endless cycle of battle and watchfulness, a knight eternally bound to a throne without a king. To truly understand a legend, you must journey back to the very beginning, before the epic battles and the loyal vows, to the silent, lonely genesis of a sentinel. The story of Igris is not one that starts with a roar, but with the profound, echoing silence of duty. This is the tale of the reluctant anchor, the guardian who was a kingdom unto himself. Imagine, if you will, a realm born from a fragment of a forgotten nightmare, a place where the very air is thick with ancient magic and the dust of eons. This is the cursed dungeon, a place not of evil, but of profound order. Its halls are not randomly assembled, they are architected, its corridors leading with an inexorable logic to a single, grand chamber. And in this chamber, on a throne that is less a seat of power and more a focal point of immense pressure, sits our protagonist. But he is not a king. He is a warden. His name, though he has no one to speak it, is Igris. His world is one of perfect, beautiful monotony. Time does not flow here as it does for us, it pools, like still water. For centuries, perhaps millennia, his existence has been a cycle of watchfulness. He does not sleep, for he requires no rest. He does not eat, for he is sustained by the dungeon's core. His only sustenance is his purpose, to stand guard. His crimson armor, a masterpiece of otherworldly craftsmanship, does not gleam. It absorbs the faint, spectral light of the throne room, a deep, dark red like a heart beating in a chest of stone. His great, black plume is motionless, a stark contrast against the bloody hue of his pauldrons. He is a statue, but a statue with eyes that see everything and a mind that contemplates the emptiness. What does such a being contemplate? We, who live in a world of constant stimulus, might imagine him plotting or yearning. But his consciousness is different. It is vast, deep, and slow. A single thought might take a decade to form. He contemplates the geometry of the chamber, the perfect lines of the pillars, the way the shadows fall across the flagstones in patterns that have not changed in 1,000 years. He remembers every challenger who has ever breached this inner sanctum, not as individuals with names and stories, but as data points, as fluctuations in the system. A knight from a forgotten kingdom, his silver armor tarnished with fear. A party of adventurers, their bravado evaporating in the chilling aura of his presence. A monstrous beast, all rage and instinct, crushed beneath his boot. They were all interruptions in the silence, problems to be solved, and then, forgotten. The throne room would reset, the blood would fade, and the silence would return, deeper and more profound than before. This is the core of the reluctant anchor. He did not choose this duty. He was forged for it, as the throne was carved for him and the chamber was built around him. He is the linchpin of this entire reality. Without his unwavering presence, the dungeon would lose its meaning, its finality. He is the period at the end of a long and terrifying sentence. There is no pride in this, nor resentment. It simply is. He is the mountain. He is the tide. He is the unyielding law of this contained universe. Let's delve deeper into the nature of his solitude. In the vibrant, chaotic world of Korean anime and webtoons, we are used to characters with passionate friendships, bitter rivalries, and complex social networks. Igris had none of this. The other creatures of the dungeon, the goblins in the early corridors, the liches in the mid-levels, they were not his comrades. They were part of the system, automated defenses. He was the consciousness at the center, the one being with true awareness. His only relationship was with the dungeon itself, a silent, psychic symbiosis. He could feel its mana flow, sense the tremors when a new challenger entered its gates. He was the dungeon's heart and its fist. Imagine the sheer, crushing weight of such an existence. To be eternally aware, eternally powerful, and eternally stationary. His world was defined by its borders, the four walls of the throne room, the dais of the throne, the space between his position and the grand, sealed entrance. This was his entire cosmos. He had never felt the sun on his face, never tasted rain, never heard the wind rustle through leaves. His senses knew only the cool, damp stone, the metallic scent of his own armor, and the deafening quiet. This is what makes him so profoundly relatable, even in his alien nature. He embodies a feeling we all fear, being trapped by a role, defined by a purpose we did not choose, no matter how grand it may seem from the outside. He is the ultimate company man, in a company with no exit strategy. Now, let's paint the scene of his eternal vigil with the vivid colors of an anime production. Picture the opening shot of an episode focused on him. No dialogue, no sound but a low, ambient hum and the occasional, resonant drip of water from some unseen crevice. The camera pans slowly across the intricate carvings on the walls, showing scenes of ancient battles no one remembers. It glides over the floor, where the ghostly impressions of past warriors seem to linger. Finally, it settles on him, Igris, seated on his throne, one hand resting on the armrest, the other on the hilt of his massive sword, which is planted firmly on the ground. The animation would be subtle, breathtakingly so. A slight, almost imperceptible glow in the slit of his helmet. The faintest shimmer of light along the razor edge of his blade. This is not a still image, this is a being in a state of perfect, poised potential energy. He is a spring, coiled for 1,000 years. This is the before picture. This is the Igris who was complete in his incompleteness. He was a perfect guardian, a flawless system. He had no need for a king, for he was the embodiment of the law that would serve one. He had no need for comrades, for his own strength was an army. He had no need for a name, for his title was his identity, the final gatekeeper. He did not dream of freedom, for the concept of freedom was as alien to him as the concept of time is to a rock. His will was not his own, it was the will of the dungeon, the will of the system. He was the steadfast anchor, holding this entire pocket reality fast to the seabed of its own existence. He was not waiting for a challenger worthy enough to defeat him, such a thought would be a flaw in his programming, a crack in his perfection. He was simply waiting, for the next interruption, for the next problem to solve, for the next fleeting break in the silence that would, inevitably, return. He was the calm before the storm, a calm that had lasted for eons. And as any great story teaches us, a calm that long-lasting can only be shattered by a storm of cataclysmic proportions. The throne was empty, the guardian was steadfast, and the stage was set. All it needed was a player who would not just challenge the system, but break it entirely. But that is a story for another time. For now, we leave the Crimson Knight in his silent hall, a monument to duty, a king in a castle of one, the reluctant anchor holding fast in a sea of endless, timeless silence. The silence was the first thing to die. It was not broken by a roar, or a war cry, but by the simple, terrifying sound of the grand doors to the inner sanctum being pushed open. For Igris, this was not merely another intrusion. This was a shift in the atmosphere of his entire world. The air, once thick with dormant magic, now crackled with an alien and aggressive energy. Previous challengers brought fear, desperation, or arrogant bluster into this room. This one, a lone human named Jin-Woo, brought something else, an aura of absolute, chilling potential. As Jin-Woo stepped across the threshold, the very narrative of the dungeon changed. Imagine the scene in the most cinematic Korean anime style. The camera would swoop down from the vaulted ceiling, focusing on Igris, still seated on his throne. But this time, there would be a new detail, a slight, almost microscopic tilt of his helmeted head. This was the knight's equivalent of a gasp of shock. The system of his existence, which had operated flawlessly for centuries, was processing a variable it had never encountered. The human's mana felt chaotic, boundless, and hungry. With the deliberate, gravity-defying grace of a final boss animation, Igris rose. The sound of his armor plates shifting was like the grinding of continental plates. He did not simply stand, he unfurled, a crimson specter of war. He drew his massive sword, the metallic ring echoing not as a challenge, but as a statement of immutable law. This was the law of his domain, thou shalt not pass. The battle began not with a flashy technique, but with an overwhelming display of Igris's perfected skill. He was a tempest in crimson steel. His movements were so fluid and precise they seemed to bend physics, each swing of his sword creating vacuum arcs that could slice through stone. He was the embodiment of 1,000 years of combat data, a flawless warrior. He pressed Jin-Woo back, his assault a beautiful, deadly dance meant to overwhelm and annihilate. This was the pinnacle of the old world, the ultimate defense mechanism asserting its dominance. But Jin-Woo was not of the old world. He was the herald of a new one. And as the human began to adapt, to move faster, to hit harder, the nature of the clash evolved. The animation would shift here, the crisp, clear lines of the throne room would begin to warp as shadowy energy leaked from Jin-Woo. The crimson of Igris's armor was no longer the only dominant color, it was now contrasted against a deepening, living black. Igris, for the first time, was facing something his vast experience could not categorize. This was not a warrior trying to survive, this was a predator trying to consume. The climax of the battle was not the moment Jin-Woo landed a blow, but the moment Igris realized he could not win. It was a seismic shift in his consciousness. His flawless swordsmanship was being met and countered by brute, shadow-infused force and impossible speed. A crack appeared in his helmet, a physical manifestation of the shattering of his entire reality. The system had failed, the anchor was being ripped from the seabed, and then came the moment of truth. Beaten, broken, and brought to one knee, the mighty Crimson Knight did something he had never done before, he yielded. He did not fall, he knelt. In that pose, the very essence of his character was revealed. It was not a posture of defeat, but one of profound honor and acknowledgement. He had tested the challenger and found him worthy in a way the throne itself never was. The storm had not destroyed the anchor, it had shown the anchor that there was a vast, wild ocean beyond its single, fixed point. The clash was over, the crimson had met the shadow, and in that meeting, the night's long, solitary watch finally, mercifully, came to an end. In the wake of that cataclysmic battle, the throne room was steeped in a silence more profound than any that had come before. This was not the silence of emptiness, but the heavy, pregnant quiet of a world holding its breath. Igris, the unyielding anchor, knelt upon the cold stone. His body was battered, his armor scarred, but it was his spirit that had undergone the most seismic shift. The code of his existence, the singular law of guard, had been rendered null and void. He was, for the first time in eternity, a being without a purpose. He was a masterpiece sword without a hand to wield it, a loyal hound without a master to command. And then, a shadow fell over him. This was not the shadow of an ending, but of a new beginning. Sung Jin-Woo stood before the kneeling knight. The expectation, the ancient script of every battle, dictated one outcome, the final, merciful blow. The victor claims the spoils, the dungeon core, and moves on, leaving the guardian as a forgotten trophy. But Jin-Woo did not raise his hand to strike. He extended it. This was not a gesture of pity, nor one of simple recruitment. It was an offer, a question posed in the silent language of warriors. In that extended hand, Igris did not see condescension. He saw recognition. He saw a reflection of his own unwavering will, now tempered with a purpose that reached beyond these stone walls. For his entire existence, Igris had been the final, static goal. Now, he was being offered a place in a journey. The throne was a dead end, the path of the Shadow Monarch was an open road leading into infinity. The camera of our mental anime would zoom in on the slight, almost imperceptible tremble of Igris's gauntlet. This was his choice, not a system command, not a preordained duty, but a conscious, willing decision of the soul. And he chose. He lowered his head, not in defeat, but in fealty. The moment his will accepted the bond, the transformation was both subtle and magnificent. The deep, blood crimson of his armor did not fade, instead, it was now accented by wisps of living shadow that coiled around the metal-like loyal serpents. His eyes, once a piercing red from within his helmet, now burned with a cooler, more intense violet flame, the unmistakable mark of the Shadow Army. He did not lose his identity, he was elevated by it. He was no longer just the Crimson Knight, he was now the Crimson Shadow, the right hand of the Monarch. This oath was not one of subjugation, but of synergy. Igris brought his millennia of combat mastery, his unbreakable honor, and his profound understanding of power to a ruler who could truly appreciate it. In return, Jin-Woo gave him what the empty throne never could: a cause worth dying for, a comrade to fight beside, and a name that would be spoken with reverence, not fear. He was no longer a solitary monument, but the most trusted general in a living, breathing legion. The silent guardian had found his king, and in that sacred vow, the knight in crimson was reborn, his loyalty no longer a programmed function, but a burning, unshakable creed. To witness Igris in his new role is to witness the perfect fusion of an ancient, unyielding spirit with an ever-evolving, boundless army. His legacy was not cemented in the solitude of his throne room, but in the chaotic, glorious battles fought alongside his sovereign. The Crimson Knight did not fade into the anonymous ranks of the shadows, he became their brilliant, bloody standard. He is the living bridge between the old world's strict honor and the new world's adaptive might, a pillar of fire and shadow around which the entire legion rallies. Imagine the scene in a climactic battle sequence. A horde of monstrous beasts charges, a tidal wave of fangs and fury. The lesser shadows brace for impact. But then, a flash of crimson cuts through the gloom. It's Igris. He doesn't simply fight, he performs a symphony of destruction, each movement a verse from an ancient martial text, now powered by the raw, dark energy of the Shadow Monarch. His signature sword, now wreathed in tendrils of darkness, moves with the same flawless precision, but now it strikes with a weight that can shatter fortress walls. He is both the disciplined master and the unstoppable force. He is the veteran senpai who leads not with loud commands, but with breathtaking, silent example. The younger, more impulsive shadows like Tusk or Iron look upon him with a sense of awe. He is the embodiment of the power and prestige they aspire to achieve. His loyalty to Jin-Woo is the cornerstone of his new existence. It is not the blind obedience of a programmed servant, but the devoted service of a knight who has, after an eternity of searching, finally found a liege worthy of his sword. When the monarch gives an order, Igris is already moving, his understanding of tactics and power so profound that he often anticipates the strategy. He is the ultimate instrument, perfectly tuned and wielded by a master's hand. In moments of respite, he is often seen standing a respectful distance behind Jin-Woo, a silent, crimson sentinel amidst the chattering shadows. His presence is a statement. Where the king goes, his knight will follow, unto the end of all things. This is the ultimate legacy of Igris. He proved that true strength is not erased by change, but is refined by it. He took the core of his being, his honor, his skill, his unwavering resolve, and allowed it to be amplified by a new purpose. He is no longer the guardian of a dead-end room, but a key defender of an entire world. He is a constant, reassuring reminder that even in the chaotic, unpredictable world of dungeons and monarchs, some things remain unshakable. The Crimson Knight found a king, the solitary warrior found a family, and in doing so, the legend of Igris transformed from a forgotten dungeon tale into an eternal anthem of loyalty and power.